Rock bottom. You've probably heard the term before, but does it really mean what we think it means? And why do we use it in the way that we use it? Well, we're going to hear from one of our favorite patrons of celebrity recovery and dig in a little bit deeper on the concept of rock bottom.
I'm JT. I'm in my mid-30s, have a 10-year media career, and nearly a decade of sobriety. So how did another middle-class kid turn into a blackout drunk and a heroin junkie? More importantly, how did it change, and where do we go from here? This is my story.
Rock bottom is a term that is used in many different walks of life, specifically in recovery. I'm sure you've heard it before. Even if you're not in recovery or haven't experienced someone in your life close to you that's involved with any sort of addiction, the concept on the outset is the very bottom, right? The very bottom of your behaviors, of your emotional well-being, whatever it may be. The reason people use it is because the idea is it can't possibly get any worse, right? That's where rock bottom comes into play. Well, one of my favorite, and I know many people in the recovery community's favorite celebrity recovery, open recovery people, Lowe, was in the news recently talking about his rock bottom. So let's read Rob's quote here. Lowe said rock bottom came in 1990 when he was 26 years old, about the same age I was when I got sober. After a night of partying, Lowe returned home and discovered his mother was leaving a message on his answering machine. She pleaded for Lowe to pick up. His grandfather had had a heart attack. Lowe didn't pick up. This is quoting Rob now. I remember going to the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror, and my thought process was, you need to drink directly from this bottle of Cuervo Gold so you can go to sleep, so you can wake up, so you can deal with this. His grandfather. Out of all the things that had gone on in my life, that was the thing where I finally went, this is no way to live. I went to rehab 48 hours later. So you hear that story, and again, I love Rob Lowe. I love hearing him talk about his recovery. I think he's about to have 30-some years this year. He got sober at 26, which is really pretty young when you think about it. And so I recommend going and listening. He has like multiple podcasts. He's done long-form interviews. Go listen to anything the guy's done. I love the way he talks about his sobriety and recovery. He's one of the people out there who's really influenced me to be open about it and not be as touchy about, my own privacy. I'm always clear about the anonymity of others, right? But I've learned to be open about my own experience, and Rob is one of the people who has influenced me to do that. Why I love using his quote, and I'm sure he would tell you this if he's not already said this publicly, rock bottom is different for everyone. And one of the things you might have heard in terms of rock bottom is you might have heard someone say, or you may have said yourself about an addict, they had to hit rock bottom before they could get sober. And that's probably true. I would say that everyone has a certain lowest point, right? But I'm actually going to point to, before we get back into Rob's story here, point to another one of my favorite outspoken public recovery people, Dax Shepard, who famously said, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, rock bottom isn't always what changes your life. So these are two really important prongs on the rock bottom scale, right? You're probably going to hit, for me, I certainly did, a low point or a lowest point in your life, in your using, but it may not be the thing that actually gets you into recovery or gets you sober. And I wonder about that for myself because I had so many low points. And a lot of times you may hear, if you hear someone else's story, people talk about your bar keeps getting lower, right? And that's part of the thing. Like whatever my family thought might have been my rock bottom, or even me personally might have thought was my lowest point, well, I got lower after that. And you think about so many times when people talk about someone's low point and how could they not possibly change after that low point. Well, one of the things that we've talked about many times, and the research is readily available now, is that the brain chemistry changes so much over the life of an addiction. The brain chemistry of an addict already coming out of the womb, this is my case, is already different, is already prone to the addiction and to the addictive behaviors. So the behaviors towards drugs and alcohol, but the behaviors that also manifest themselves that are outside of the actual using, that just become part of the circle of life of an addict. So when I experienced low points as an addict, I might have looked up and said, I can't believe this. I never thought my life would get this way. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop using, because at a certain point, the addiction is more powerful than anything that could have possibly gotten me to change. My loved ones, my family. It's especially hard when people have kids, young families, spouses that are deeply connected to them, and you would just assume that those would be the things that would make them change. And sometimes they are the things that make someone change, but that's the point, is that everyone's different and the low point is different for everyone. Looking back, I would have looked at 1,000 different things in my life where I would have gone, well, it couldn't have possibly got worse than that. I remember the summer before my last year of college when me and my dad were on the outs. I didn't know if we were ever going to speak again. I didn't have a job. I was loafing. I was on the lam. My girlfriend was taking care of me. She was paying for everything, my whole life. And I was running around drinking and using and cheating on her and lying and just being the biggest sack of S, and the type of guy that even me at my worst, I never thought I could possibly be. Well, how did that not get me sober? For me, partially it was because I didn't think I had used it all up. I didn't believe yet that the only way out was to stop using. I thought for a long time that the things in my life were just happening to me. The issues that I had with drugs and alcohol were circumstantial. They weren't because of me. They were because of these bad strokes of luck that I was getting, or I just hadn't quite figured out. And that one day I would grow out of it or just figure it out, or a light bulb would come on and I would know how to both behave like a decent human being in society and also drink alcohol or use drugs. You might have thought that it was when I went to jail and I had to eat heroin and I got a DWI and I no-call, no-showed my job and I didn't lose my job over that whole thing. Well, how did I not change my ways after that? I had a free pass. Or when I was in this horrible accident that could have landed me in prison and I went home without even a warning or an issue. How was that not the thing? Now, those things were part of things getting worse and worse. And eventually we go back to that motel room. That was my rock bottom, or it was the thing. It may not have been the worst point of my life, but it was the time that got me to change. So the point is that sadly, and this is an unfortunate truth, the worst thing that you think could have possibly happened to you or someone that you know that is an addict, the worst thing you thought they could possibly do, sadly, they may do worse. And that worst thing may not be the thing that gets them sober. That is not always how it turns out. Some people have relatively high bottoms. You look at Rob's story, and that's awful. I would feel the same way if I was in his boat. I think I would be dejected about not being there for my family in a moment like that. But I think that Rob would probably tell you, I probably shouldn't project. Let me just say this. I was around the same age as Rob when I got sober. And I think even though I was a heroin addict and I was quasi-suicidal, ready to die, I still think I had a relatively high bottom. Why? Well, I didn't hurt anyone else. I didn't hurt myself in a significant way where it was like serious long-term damage to be done. I didn't have an awful record in terms of the justice system. I wasn't in prison. I didn't kill anybody, but I'm sorry to laugh about it, but like I do feel like I had a relatively high bottom. Partially, I say that because I was 25 when I got sober. So I felt at the point where I got sober that I had used up all my lives. I had finally gotten to that point where I go, I can't milk this for anything more. There is no more perceived good that can come out of me drinking and using anymore. There's the bad had finally outweighed the good in a way that I believed that this was the only choice that I had. Again, that was my experience, but I say relatively high bottom because, well, something could have happened. I had many points, maybe it was one or the other of the low times I just mentioned, where, like I was talking about, circumstance would occur that would get me out of tight spots, and I would kind of milk it for more. And I got down to those last years kind of running on empty, right, to the very end, but it was all circumstantial. It wasn't because I wisened up or got something right or got just clean enough. It was just by the skin of my teeth that it was happening it that way. And that could have happened again. And I could have kept using, and something even worse could have happened, or I just could have continued on and gotten older and more addicted and screwed up my life in more irreparable ways down the line. And that's why I think I had a relatively high bottom. And so I love hearing from Rob anytime, but I think it's important for us to analyze what rock bottom was for him and what rock bottom was for me. This is both of us telling our own experiences here on the record. And they're similar in a lot of ways, and they're different in a lot of ways. Lowe, as far as I know, did not have a raging heroin addiction like I did. Now, you've heard me talk about that before, right? His addiction, where he thought he had to drown himself in that bottle of Cuervo, I believe now that that's really just the same thing as me drowning myself in black tar heroin. But we both ended up where we ended up. The unfortunate thing is, if you're the loved one of an addict or you ever find yourself in that situation, this is very frightening, right? Because you go, oh my goodness, whatever the worst thing I can imagine is, it could be even worse than that. And that's a hard thing to reconcile. And I've unfortunately seen many families, including my own, go through this. And some of them go through it over and over again and keep ending up in rehabs and keep ending up in programs. And it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage and a lot of faith to get through as a family member or a loved one in situations like that. And you know, I say my heart goes out to them for that. But there are a couple silver linings. Like I said, rock bottom can be a little bit higher for some people. And just because that terrible thing that you never thought could happen happens, and they don't get it then, that's not the thing that makes them get sober. That doesn't mean that it has to get worse for them to get sober. It doesn't mean that there has to be a worse thing. It just means it's not happening right now. But I know plenty of people. You could even say that for myself. Like I said, the moment where I got sober was not necessarily the worst thing that ever happened to me. Being in that motel room, for whatever reason, ended up being the last for me. But I don't think, and it's hard to quantify these things, right? Only the person can measure what's better or worse. But I don't think that moment of me being in the motel room and out of money and my parents not speaking to me, sadly, that was not the worst thing that I had done to someone or the worst pickle that I'd ever been in. It was just the moment that happened for me. And for me, as I talked about before, I had a spiritual intervention that no one else could have planned or controlled or manifested. It was only going to happen through my spiritual experience. And at the same time, as I said at the beginning, I believed in that moment that I couldn't milk it for anymore. And ultimately, I think that's what it takes for the addict, is knowing and believing a lot of things, but important to this discussion, knowing and believing I have no more gimmies left in this one. I'm on I just lost life number 8, right? This is life number 9. And again, it's all about the perception of the addict. And there's no way to plan it out to know when or what is going to occur that's going to make that happen. So like I said, that's scary, that's frightening, but the good news is it can also happen at moments when you're not expecting it as the loved one, and it hasn't gotten terribly worse. So I leave that as a silver lining. We never know, and the not knowing is scary. It's scary for the loved one. It's scary for the addict too. But it doesn't always have to get worse in terms of measurable things that we often regard as rock bottom for the addict to get better. Okay, let's get the mail. This is actually an older piece of mail. I don't think I've referred to it before, but I've been digging back on some old comments that I hadn't used for whatever reason in the mail, and I had a purpose for using this one today because it's something that's been on my mind. This comes from Ann Lilly, and Ann says, just wanted to say that I think you are so kind when speaking of others, and I wanted to come back and pick your brain about some stuff, but then I figured out I somehow deleted my previous comment after you responded. Anyways, hope you are well and happy to have discovered you. Thank you so much, Ann. I wanted to really pinpoint that first statement that Ann made, not because I want to pat myself on the back, because I want to admit to you that it's not necessarily true. I appreciate what you said, Ann, and I really do try to be fair to all parties, especially in a situation like today where I'm talking about a celebrity. But I am not naturally a kind person. I hate to say that. I wish that was not the case. I wish I was naturally a kind person and that I had a kind heart. I don't. Naturally, I have a dark heart. Naturally, I am cynical. Naturally, I don't see the best in people. It has taken a lot of work, a lot of spiritual work, and a lot of work through recovery, and a lot of, as I've talked about before, acting my way into right thinking, acting my way into kindness, pushing myself to do kind things for people because it is not my natural proclivity. And I have learned, like I have with so many other things in sobriety, that the more I push myself to do the right thing, like to be kind to people, the more that it starts to come naturally. So am I a kinder person today than I was 10 years ago? No question about it. Absolutely. Am I a kind person? I don't think so. I wish I was more kind naturally. I wish that my brain didn't go to the dark places that it goes a lot of times. But that's my lot in life as an addict. And I know someone out there is going to reference me being too hard on myself because it happens every single video. But I'll just say, whatever you see here, whatever you see in this guy that you know from these videos or you know from the radio, or even if we've met, even if we're friends, even if we know each other. And I'm sure there are people that know me, that view this stuff now, that know me from like high school, who saw me be really unkind to people, or people from college who saw me be really unkind to people. People who knew me back then who, if you met on the street and they knew nothing about the guy I am today, would say, I'm an asshole or I'm a piece of shit. And they wouldn't be wrong. Because, like I said, I didn't always behave well. I behaved poorly. I regret my behavior. There's a lot of reasons for it, nature and nurture being some of them. But all I can do is try to get better today. And I can say that I've worked really hard on it. And like I said, I am a kinder person today than I was 10 years ago, or even maybe before that. But, as far as it concerns these videos and me talking about subjects like celebrities who have moments with recovery, sobriety, addiction, etc., I have opinions. I feel certain ways about people, places, things, and I don't always voice them. This has kind of always been my rule in radio too. I only give my opinion when it's necessary, and I try really not ever to give my opinion about someone that I don't know. On the radio, I'll give my opinion, and a lot of times if it's someone that I don't know personally, it will be an opinion that's clearly in jest. This is not necessarily, I don't think, the place for that. So I don't know a lot of these people that I talk about. And so I don't want to pretend that I have some knowledge of their situation, because when we're talking about recovery, it's so important. Everybody's journey is their journey. And so in keeping in line with my beliefs in terms of sobriety and recovery, I don't think it's my place to project, like I almost did today, I don't get it right all the time, what they're feeling or going through. I can only give my experience. So I do try to be fair. I do try to be balanced in these approaches, especially when talking about people that I don't know. But like I said, it is all practiced. And I think that is something that I'm so grateful to have learned. Back before I got sober, I just thought that I was a bad person. And that led to a lot of my problems. And I didn't really seek out wanting to get better because I didn't think it was possible. And to know today that I can believe that I've become a better person and I can be a better person. I'm never going to be perfect. I'm never going to get it right all the time. I'm going to fail every day, and I'm okay with that because in the long run, I'm able to see the progress that I've made, and I'm so content with that. Going back to our conversation about rock bottom, I remember just a couple years before I got sober thinking, God, I just wish I could be a regular person. I just wish I didn't have to drink or use or overeat or sleep with women to feel normal at the end of the day, or to escape who I am at the end of the day. And I have that for 10 years now, and I'm so thankful for it. And so all I can do is push for more, right? And try to give back as much as I can. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to be part of the mail, you can reach out at any of the following handles. You can comment on this video. You can feel free to DM if you want to have a private conversation. Anything there I will ask before posting. Anything that comes on a public post is fair game. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Hey family, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from watching this. And feel free to comment below. Love.